Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a patron at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, and tonight we have a guest, Dr. Len Scolea, who we could describe as one of the most ultimate skeptics, a skeptic, a man of science who wouldn't in the years before recently would have never considered having even written a book about what we're going to talk about tonight. And that book, of course, is called For All Is Love, A Spiritual Journey of Eternal Love, concerning his wife who is on the other side. So we're going to talk to Len tonight. A couple quick notes. I know it's been a little while since I've had a video up. Been in the process of moving. I don't usually do videos from my bed using my really junky webcam on my laptop, but let's just say we've had a kind of desk crisis trying to get a desk out of Sam Levitt's. So I don't have a desk. I don't have a place to put my camera. So we're just going to go like this, but it doesn't look too bad. It's very comfortable sitting on my bed, actually. So we're going to go with that. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Len. As you suggested, really it's going to be about, a chance for you to tell your story like you requested. I'm not going to interject many questions or anything unless I really need to clarify something. And then we'll save the questions and all that for after. So I'm pretty much going to turn it over to you now. Len, how's it going?
Good. As I mentioned, my name is Dr. Len Scolea. I've been in medicine and science all my life, and I truly was the ultimate skeptic. This is a love story. The story began November 5th, 2018 at 5:31 in the morning. This is an eternal love story. The book that was written, our first book, For All Is Love, A Spiritual Journey of Eternal Love. It's twin souls, the woman on the other side and the man on this side, and their extraordinary story to be together. It was 5:31 in the morning on November 5th, 2018. You see, my wife, Felicia, a beautiful soul, she was my heart. We were together 43 years. She was 66 years of age, and she died of lung cancer. She never smoked a day in her life and died of lung cancer. At 5:30 in the morning there on November 5th, 2018, she was there. At 5:31, she was gone. It was rapid, graphic, violent. She died in my arms on the kitchen floor. The aftermath of her death, I was devastated in any parameter of measurement, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and I was destroyed. I was broken. She was my heart. It's as simple as that. Every day in the aftermath of her death was, I bled a little bit, I cried a little bit, I died a little bit. After 3 weeks, near the end of November 2018, I had to get out of the house. I was disintegrating. I didn't know who I was anymore. They said a light at the end of the tunnel. There was no tunnel. So I went to, it's Buffalo, New York. I went to the hospice of Buffalo, New York, a wonderful people. Everyone sits around, tells their tragic stories, grief, the deep, dark despair. And I started to notice after several meetings that these people were talking about afterlife, after death communication, ADCs, after death communication with their loved ones. And I'm thinking to myself, these people are so wishful thinking, grasping at straws. They're just, this is just their wishful thinking imagination. However, a name came up in Lilydale, New York. Now, Lilydale, New York is a very large spiritual center, about a little over an hour drive from Buffalo, New York. And there was a woman there they mentioned several times she had a gift, a special gift. So I said, at this point, what do I have to lose? I just lost everything. I lost her. So I set an appointment with this medium, this woman who had this special gift. And it was about December 19th. It was December 19th, 2018. She only knew my name. I went, we had the reading. She said many things about only Felicia and I would know. And Felicia came through very strongly. But what I left with was, in this phase of the journey, was called the letters. She said, write her a letter every day, pour out your heart, tell her about your day. It's your time with her only, you and her. So I did. The 2018 holiday season was a total nightmare. I had meltdowns, bad days, I'd write 2 letters. Really bad days, 3 letters. And she said, a shift will happen. The shift occurred about the first week in January 2019. Lights are being turned on. You have to turn them twice. Computers are going on by themselves. Radios are playing that are off. Radios are turning to channels. Don't kill yourself. Don't commit suicide. And on it went. It was dramatic, very dramatic. I called it in our book, The Awakening, but really it was getting hit over the head. I was getting hit over the head. And I said, okay, Felicia, I get it. I get it. So at that point, what do? You're a man in medicine and science, very analytical person, very rational person. See, I don't believe in, it doesn't work for me. Faith, belief, opinions, feelings, that doesn't work for me. Others, it may work. I'm interested in one thing, evidence. Massive amounts of great evidence. Follow the evidence wherever it leads you. Evidence, that's it. So I started relentless research. It's in my DNA. I'm in medicine and science. So I started with all the fields. Amazon Prime loved me. In January, my dining room table was piled with books, books after books. I'm relentless, getting 2 hours sleep, reading everything under the sun, all night, all day, etc. I went through all the near-death experience database, the Alexanders, the Moody's, etc. I went through the ADCs with the after-death communication, with the Guggenheims and all the others. I went through I spoke to so many colleagues in hospice throughout the country. I went to the DBVs, the deathbed vision stuff, the hospice stuff. I went through the EVPs, the butlers, and so many others as far as the electronic voice phenomenon, where when they started to actually tape voices coming through from the other side the last 70 years, where it was very specific with pet names. I went through the OBEs, the consciousness fields. I was aware of the reincarnation fields and the Newton stuff, life between lives and reincarnation. And this was the turning point. I'm sitting there in my dining room in late January, and I said, there is no death. It's absolute. It's unequivocal. You take this massive amounts of data. I call it the totality of overwhelming evidence, a Mount Everest of evidence. You take this massive amounts of data, of evidence, great evidence, the last 40 years, especially the last 170 years, you come away with one principle, one axiom. There is no death. There's an afterlife, there's a life before and a life after, and it's very active. Now, after this research, there was from the spring of 2019 to the fall of 2019, I broke it down into 3 branches of a tree. The first branch was the meditations, all the kinds of meditation, which I'll get into momentarily. The second branch was EMDR therapy. That's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I'll get into that momentarily too. And then the third branch was, and that's connected to reincarnation. And then the third branch was the transformational events. So now the first branch, I'm doing all kinds of meditations. And basically you're opening your chakras, which enhances psychic abilities. These are the energy centers from the top of the head to the base of the spine. You quiet the brain states going from into the alpha and the theta states, where then spirit, you quiet down the noise level. So then spirit can impress upon your consciousness to communicate. Okay, I'm going through all this types of meditation. And what came out of this, I was spoiled. Felicia came through the first time. And it was dramatic. I'm getting all kinds, no matter what meditation I used, I'm getting tremendous waves of energy blasting, flowing through me. And the energy was so powerful, it was tangible. It's like these energy waves, and I found out later on, I didn't know what the hell it was. I didn't know what this was. And then I did research, talked to a lot of docs in the field of afterlife. It's clairsentience, the feeling of this energy waves, clairsentience. Now, at this point, I'm going to fast forward in the book, our first book. We developed a system of target clairsentience. What I meant by that was this. If I requested hold my hands, I'd only get tremendous energy waves just on my hands to my wrist. If I'd say touch my heart or hug me, only tremendous energy waves in my chest. We got to the point, and when I said totally merge within me, Felicia, totally massive amounts of energy flowing through my body, my whole body. We got to the point when I'd go to bed, we'd spoon. I'd turn over my right side. I says, honey, baby, let's spoon. I'd get waves of energy just in my back. Now, and later in the book, we called it target clairsentience. We used it later on as a confirmation process of the clairvoyance to see. Now, let me explain clairsentience this way. It's like humidity. You can't see it, you can't hear it, but you can feel it. That's what clairsentience. Once you feel these tremendous waves of love energy through your whole body, there's nothing like it you ever will experience. So that was the first branch. We developed a tremendous methodology of communication of clairsentience. That was always our strong suit. And today, it's still one of our strong suits. Now, the second way was, remember, EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Now, what is that? Well, first of all, I was in bad shape emotionally. I was broken. I'm going through the grief. First, I had the grief of losing her. I had the trauma of her last moments, the images of her last moments as she died in my arms. And then you have the guilt. You're in the medicine and science field, and I couldn't save her. Okay. So at that point, there's a lot of data the last 20 plus years from the 9/11 survivors, etc., that you have the two hemispheres of the brain. The left hemisphere, which is very analytical, the right hemisphere, which is more your psychic, emotion, creativity, intuition part. A lot of data has indicated that when trauma and grief is very bad, of a high level, it's actually organic in the right hemisphere of the brain. The grief, the trauma, the guilt, etc. It's organic. In other words, in the right hemisphere of the brain, physiologically, it's not functioning properly. It's frozen, stasis, parts of the right hemisphere of the brain. What they found with EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing, is by multiple stimuli, auditory, eye movement, quantitative of the bad images, all at once. It's very intense. You going from the right to the left hemisphere of the brain, you basically blow out that stasis, that frozen, the physiological parts of the brain that are not functioning properly. And it works very, very quickly. Now, the results. So now I'm saying, well, who am I going to go to on EMDR therapy? There is a lot of people in the country, but I'll give you the analogy of Star Wars, Yoda. When you want to become a Jedi Knight the best, you go to the teacher, you go to Yoda, okay? You don't go to the other Jedi Knights. So there was a woman in Seattle, Washington. She taught many of the therapists in the country. So I went to Yoda, Seattle, Washington. Now, I flew out there April. It was Easter weekend. Holy Thursday, we started our first session. Very intense. And I was a bad case because I had so much guilt, so much trauma, so much guilt, trauma, grief. Got the grief. Okay, so the second day, all hell broke loose. Now, before I went out there, I went back to that medium in Lilydale who had the true gift. And she said, Felicia came through again, and she said, you're going to have a spiritual rebirth. Felicia will be with you, and it will change the course of everything. Okay. So now, on the second day, what basically happened, it's detailed described in our book. When you all of a sudden, Felicia's blasting me with the clairsentience at things that I'm talking about with the therapist, etc. But it really was when I said, well, it was meant to be, and everything broke loose. All of a sudden, Felicia took over my consciousness. I'm started to talking about ancient Greece, ancient Rome. And I describe it in detail in the book. The therapist is writing this down as quickly as possible. And as Felicia's talking, as you know, an ultimate validation is you get chills up and down your spine. And the therapist was getting that several times throughout this. I'm talking about, I see it. Felicia sitting on a bench. I see the wreath of white flowers in her hair. I see her bracelets, the color, the designs. It's very, very detailed, very vivid. I'm in a Roman or Greek, at that time I didn't know, uniform. I had the profile of an eagle, the sun shining off the yellow bronze of my shield and my armor. It was extremely detailed. And that's a summary of it. Now, after this was all done, it went on for quite a while. The therapist said to me, this is reincarnation. Reincarnation was just a word to me. As I flew back from Seattle, Washington, my head was spinning. Reincarnation. So I get back and I start doing research. Who can I go to on reincarnation to explore this? A name kept coming up, Dr. Brian Weiss. Impeccable medical credentials, world-renowned neurologist, psychiatrist, Columbia, Yale, chairman Department of Psychiatry at Mount Sinai. Impeccable. Now he is really the dean of reincarnation, which started in the 1980s when he has written many books. He travels throughout the world and his audiences are large. However, a few times a year he goes to the Omega Institute. Now, the Omega Institute, if you've heard of it, is just south of Albany, New York. And there he gives a class for a whole week on reincarnation. Small groups. I was fortunate enough to get in the class. I spent a whole week with Brian Weiss, whole week. The bottom line that came out, first of all, hypnosis. There are many, many forms of hypnosis. Hypnosis basically is a focused relaxation of the mind. Now, it's all about, it's not this nonsense of Hollywood, you're getting sleepy, waving the watch. That's all nonsense stuff. It's basically, you're aware of everything going on. You have the two major parts of the brain, the mind, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. It's like the iceberg. 20% of your activity you're aware is your conscious mind. The other 80% is the subconscious mind, which is like the iceberg below the surface of the water. In the subconscious mind, that's where all the records are kept. All your past lives, your life between lives. And what hypnosis does, it slowly drags out those records that's in the subconscious mind. And over time, once it gets activated, as time passes, more and more images start to come out. What I found out, I had a life in 11th century Mongolia. I had a 17th century England life with Felicia. And the big one at that point was 200, 300 BC. It turned out to be Rome. Her name was Antonia. My name was Claudius. Okay. Now, the third part of the branch of the tree. Then I'll revisit reincarnation and what developed. We really went into reincarnation heavily. All right. Now, the third branch was the transformational events that occurred between the spring of 2019 to the fall of 2019. And I broke it down into holding hands, the fat fingers in the ring, the picture on the wall, delay of 2 days of our 1-year anniversary of passing away, which he didn't, and the family portrait. Now, the fat fingers in the ring. You know, as you get older, your fingers get fat. The wedding rings don't fit. The rings don't fit. Okay. So I had her wedding ring around my neck, but I never could find mine. So it was 7 months later after she transitioned. I didn't sleep upstairs in our bedroom for 7 months. I slept on the couch in the family room, etc. So it was a Saturday. In fact, I remember the date. It was June 22nd, 2019. I went upstairs, cleaned up our bedroom, and she had a big jewelry chest. And we thought that the top of the jewelry chest was solid, but it was a false top. Opened the top, and there was my wedding ring. I was all excited to put it around my neck, went downstairs, went into the family room, and there's a portrait picture of her. And I said, honey, I found out my ring. Now our rings are together around my neck by my heart. I turned on the TV, easy listening. Now, of the infinity of songs in this world, you know what song started instantly playing? Our wedding song, I Won't Last a Day Without You by the Carpenters. Of the infinity of, at that moment in time. So we had our wedding song, we had our rings. The only thing we needed was the band and the cake. We were all set. We got remarried again. That's one. Two, in reading a lot of Newton's work and others, they said you actually can hold hands with the spirit on the other side. So my clairvoyance was picking up with all the psychic exercises I was doing to strengthen our clairvoyance, clairaudience. Clairaudience was still poor at that time. Okay. It was picking up, getting sharp. The subjective clairaudience, where you can see through into the third eye, the mind's eye. Okay. So I felt her, by the clairsentience was always our strong suit. And I started to have glimpses to see her. So I said, I'm sitting in the living room one night, and I said, honey, hold my hands. Immediately, I got clairsentient energy waves through my both hands just to my wrist. Immediately. We did this 15 times. I was euphoric. I went upstairs and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to say this to people. They think Len's nuts. Okay, he's nuts. I've been called worse things than that. That's okay. I'm nuts. The next morning, I go down on my computer and an email is from a medium we had a connection with many months before. We didn't have any contact with her for months. She was in England on a conference, and she sends me this email. She said, Len, Felicia came to me, and this medium was very strong in clairvoyance. She said she showed me curtains opening and the sun shining in. She showed me a wall crumbling down. There was a breakthrough. She said, does this resonate with you at all? I said, yeah, we held hands last night. Felicia was smart enough. She came to this medium to reinforce what we held hands that night. Okay. Third thing was some quick ones, the picture on the wall. It was a picture I was putting up of one of the wedding pictures of the boys, and I got lazy. I should have pulled out the couch, got a stool, and put it up. It was one of those funny hooks, too. So I'm kneeling on the couch. I physically could not get it up there. I felt her energy. Whoop, boom! It was right on the hook. The next was the anniversary, delaying 2 days of sending me an email about our anniversary. Her anniversary, remember, she transitioned November 5th, 2018, and now it was November 5th, 2019. The 1-year anniversary of lack of a better word. So I'm getting a lot of emails, phone calls from family, friends. How am I doing? It's 1 year. Very emotional day. On that night of the anniversary, I get this email again from this medium who was a nurse in Ohio. And she sends me this email describing how Felicia came to her. Okay. Now, so I send back an email to this nurse, this medium, and I said, well, when did Felicia contact you? Now, the anniversary was on a Tuesday. She says, no, she contacted me on Sunday. Now, this medium had no idea what the significance was of Tuesday, November 5th. None. Says, which on Sunday? Yeah, she said she came. I saw her. She described the means of her clothes. She had flowers, the whole thing. All right. And she said, well, I'll send Len an email that you contacted me. This was Sunday, November 3rd, not November 5th. She said, no, wait. Okay. So now, November 4th, Felicia stops by the hospital where this medium is. She's a nurse. The nurse says, should I send them the email now? She says, no, wait. Then November 5th, this nurse is on a Zoom meeting. And she says, Felicia came to see her and says, send it now on the anniversary. She delayed it 2 days. So this was all planned out. Now, the last thing was there's a direct function between the power of a clairsentience, the energy that you feel, and her moods. I had a portrait of her that I was given to all the boys, all the family, and I went to Walgreens. And as the woman is enlarging it, doing all that stuff, Felicia was really happy I was doing this. She gave me a blast of clairsentience. I turned away. It almost knocked me off my feet. That's how happy she was. So those are some of the transformational events that occurred. Now, as I'm doing the research with Newton and many others, I realize that we all have an eternal spirit name on the other side. One name. Because it would get confusing. Say you have 40 lives and you were Joe in one life, Frank in another life, George in another life. How many you got? You get confused there. It gets crazy. Or you were Mary in one life, Christine in another life, Jane. Okay. But on the other side, you have one name, eternal, spiritual, your real name. So in our meditations, I ask her, I said, Felicia, what is my real name on your side, the other side? Immediate came through with clairvoyance. She spelled it out for me. Yura, U-R-A, Yura. I said, Yura, what the hell is this? Yura. Okay. I laughed. And we confirmed it, reconfirmed it. Okay, I got it. So then the next day, my curiosity got the better of me. So I went to the computer. Yura, what's she talking about? Not only these letters are a word, but they are actually a name. And if you heard of the language Sanskrit back in India, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, one of the most ancient languages of this side, it's a girl or boy's name, and it means love from the heart. Is that appropriate or what? So then a few days pass. So then I ask her, well, what's your real name on that side? Immediate. I pronounce it Kayla. I think it's prettier. Something K-L-E-A. She spelled it out for me. Means ancient Greek name, proud, famous, glorious. Glory. Okay. Now, here's another thing that's very important. There's a lot of information on this. Souls run in packs. These are like your eternal classmates from before time itself. You have been reincarnating together in all different roles, all different throughout eternity. Very, very close associations. So I asked Felicia, again, through a lot of the clairvoyance and the confirmation by the clairsentience. See, we use clairsentience as a confirmation. In other words, I'd say, is this correct? Give me a blast. Bam. If it's not correct, a no is nothing. Okay. So our soul pack has 20. Usually it's up to about 30. There's 5 that's a core that's very close, but this is a very big deal if you're in the same soul pack. I've discovered there are many people here still with me on this side who are in my soul pack and our soul pack, and it makes sense. Now, this is extremely important. This is what it's all about. Why do we reincarnate? Why do we go through all these lives? Reincarnation is the teaching tool of the soul learning curve. You cannot going to learn all about the manifestations of love, forgiveness, gratitude, compassion, etc., courage in one life. You come back each life, you have to, the objective is learning lessons. And the blueprint for this is the life chart, which I'll get into later. So reincarnation is the teaching tool for the soul learning curve. Now, we got heavily then, Felicia and I, or Kayla and Yura, got heavily into all our lives together. Now, this is my 62nd incarnation. Kayla had 58, but 16 of those lives we were together. Now, so how did this develop? It was like The Price is Right. You know, you see all the blanks, and then you got to start filling in the blanks. So it was very laborious, very rigorous, because I'm a very analytical person. It's got to be done right, and it's got to be confirmed, reconfirmed, challenged, look for consistency. So I would ask her how we set it up. Now, in our book here, Fall is Love, the chart. Now, you're not going to see this, so I'll just describe it to you. It's the chart of reincarnation for Kayla and Yura. We started the time, the year, AD, BC. We went into the Stone Age, too. At that point, well, I'll get into the Stone Age momentarily. All right. Our names in that life, where we lived, location in the world, how many children we have, boy and girl. So let me give you a few examples of this chart. Now, how we did it was, let's say, the dates were easy. Like, say here, 1541 AD. That was easy. It came through clairvoyance. Very clear, confirmed it with clairsentience over and over again. Very rigorous. Okay. Locations, like, say, here was Lithuania. I'd start with the letters. We spelled them out. And when I got it right, Lithuania, bing, bing, all the bells went off. She's blasting me. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Okay. Now, so let me give you a few examples on how she did this on the other side, which is in our second book, which I'll get into briefly at the end. All right, here we go. Lithuania, before it was Lithuania. This is 703 AD. She's Myrath and I'm Raj. We had 5 children, 1 stillborn, 3 daughters, and 1 son. All right, let's go down to 135 AD. Mesopotamia. That was, as you know, in the Mideast. It's an ancient region in the eastern Mediterranean Sea, bordered by the Zagros Mountains in the north, and present day it composes of present day Iraq, Turkey, Iran, Syria, very big. Now, she was Ada and I was Verba. We had 3 sons. Where did I get this Verba? I never even heard of these names. Where did I pull this out of? All right. Then we go on the Crimean Peninsula, 1038 AD. It goes on and on. At this point, Samara Civilization, I never heard of some of these things. Samara Civilization, 5050 BC, 5th millennium, Upper Volga River, Russia. She was Ena, E-N-A, and I was Farouk. We had 6 children, 4 daughters and 2 sons. The only thing we did, and we had 3 lives in the Stone Age.
Let me just one burning question: were you ever a female in any of your lives, or has it always been male?
I found out from, this is in our second book, 2 lives, female. Remember, I had 6. This is my 62nd incarnation. So remember that we had 16 together. There were 2 lives, female.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, now 3 lives in the Stone Age: 7543 BC, 10,009 BC, 15043 BC. Now, I was burned out. I said, I had enough. We only got the dates in the Stone Age because at that point in the Stone Age, probably just grunted at each other. So that was it. I was done. Now, it was rigorous. We spent months doing this through the clairvoyance, confirming with the clairsentience, spelling out everything, reconfirming, etc. But what came through was this. Our lives spanned across races, creeds, nationalities, ethnic groups, all over the world. And the names fit that civilization time period. It wasn't like she was Jane in the Samara Civilization. Everything fit. So, how was she doing this? It came out in the second book, I describe it, where, all right, she's over on the other side. Now, let me get into another concept of the mind. Total mind. When we're here, we have the conscious mind, but the subconscious mind is blocked off. That's where all the records are. And you gotta block off the subconscious mind about the other side and how good it is, because first of all, you got to function in this life. The second thing is, if people knew how good it was on the other side, you'd have people jumping off bridges. No, you can't have that. So, when she returned home, the total mind came. In other words, the conscious mind. Now, the amnesia blocks were released, blocking off the subconscious mind. The conscious mind and the subconscious mind combined, total mind. Then she started to get all these images, visions of all our past lives. So she went to, it's called the Akashic Records, the Hall of Records, the Mind of God. Everything that you ever conceive of in the universe, thoughts, emotions, events, is there. And all our life charts. I'll get into later about the life. That's the blueprint of each life. Okay, now. So she started to see, and she said, the laws of physics are very different on the other side than here. She started to see all the lives were together. So she said, they're not like books, like we think of books. They're holograms, 3-dimensional rotating holograms where the figures in an event actually come to life, and you immerse yourself in that life, that event of that life, living it again with a description on the other side.
And let me just point out to people watching the interview with John Davis, the near-death experiencer. He went into those, he actually experienced the technology while he was out of his body, went into like the machinery, the libraries that had those abilities, and he was able to see any point in past 3-dimensionally, holographically experience it, taste it, but he couldn't interact with people on, it was like, it was still being in a virtual environment, but he was able to see and experience all that technology. So once again, everything just always lines up. So all this information, if this stuff was quirky, it wouldn't all be consistent. It always is in all the history of the show. Now, back to you.
I always look for confirmation, reconfirmation. I never accept anything from one source. It's got to be rigorous, analytical, and evidence. That's all I care about. Now, okay. Let me just see if I covered that. Give me one moment here. Okay. So, now the other side, how close it is. It's hiding in plain sight. It's practically right on top of us. Now, let me describe. We are not separated by our loved ones by distance. We are separated by physics. And I'll get into that momentarily, by physics. So, and how I became aware of that was this. It was, maybe over a year ago. I was getting flashbacks. Although the EMDR therapy made a huge difference, I still was getting flashbacks of her last moments. And I'm upstairs in the bedroom. It's late at night at 4 or 5 in the morning or early in the morning. And I'm crying out to her. It was very painful. Immediately she came. She's blasting me with her clairsentience, trying to comfort me. I said, "You're close, aren't you?" She says, "Yeah, very close." So the other side from a law of physics and dimensions is practically right on top of us. We're separated by physics. It's a higher energy dimension, which I'll get into momentarily at the end. Now, the skeptic. I spent a whole chapter, I wrote on the skeptic, chapter 20 in our first book. I wrote a letter to the skeptic at the beginning. Now, this is how I handle the skeptic. First of all, it's good to be skeptical, open-minded skeptic. You challenge, you confirm, you test, etc. A closed-minded skeptic, how are you ever going to learn new things? How are you ever going to grow? The blind mind, I call it in the second book. Okay, so this is how I handle the skeptics. The conversations go like this, and I get it all the time. I said, okay, have you read the massive amount of evidence in the near-death experiences, the ADCs, the EVPs? I go on through all the medical scientific, a mountain. And they say no. So I say, why are you talking when you should be reading? That takes care of it. That takes care of business.
Because blah blah blah, the plural of anecdote is not data. I had a big debate with one of these guys a few months ago. It was you know, like
Yeah,
talking
no,
to a brick wall
it's
a
simple.
lot.
If you want to see, you will see. If you want to hear, you will hear. It's evidence. If the evidence makes you uncomfortable, you don't have a right to be uncomfortable. What is the evidence telling you? That's it. So that's how I handle skeptic. Now I'm going to combine three concepts here: spirit guides, council of elders, life charts. And I'm going to give you a cycle of incarnation. Free will comes into it when you decide to incarnate. I'm going to do this. Okay. Now, then you meet with your spirit guides. They're your guidance counselors, your eternal guidance counselors. They advise, give you advice, etc. You meet with your council of elders. They are the wise ones, the old sages, okay, in the hall of justice. All right, where you're getting advice from how to formulate. It's what's the objectives, what lessons you're going to learn in this incarnation, whether it be you need to brush up on your forgiveness, you need to compassion, learning all the different manifestations of love. Those are the objectives. Your life chart you plan out with your spirit guides, orientators, council of elders, etc. Then you do the reincarnation. So now you go in. When you come back, you meet with your spirit guides. They give you the review. You go into the Hall of Wisdom. Their technologies are way beyond our comprehension. And the laws of physics are so different. Power by mind, thought. It's ruled by thought, the power of thought and energy. So you get your review, what you should have did, what you did wrong. Then you meet with your council of elders. They go through it, everything. Now, this is all planned out in advance on your life chart. So what is death? I call it the universal transfer. There is no death. What death is, what we call death, is consciousness, which is your total you, is transferred from the temporary body here, built for one life, to the eternal astral body. That's it, the instantaneous transfer. Here, this is what rules the world, a cell phone. So I tell people, what about this cell phone? It's sending out high energy vibration signals. You can't detect them, text, call, you know they exist because of the results. All right. In a grand scale higher, they're in a much higher energy vibration dimension. And you can't detect it unless you learn how to detect it. Same thing, by the clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. Now, let me mention at the end, in going into the second book, Conversations with My Sweetheart on the Other Side, she gives a great detail of description of life on the other side. We return to the moment of her death. She describes as she goes through the tunnel and goes through all the various steps along the way. And before I was able to write the second book because the clairaudience really picked up. The clairaudience was poor. The clairsentience was always our strong suit, and the clairvoyance was strong. But the clairaudience really picked up the last 8-9 months, so that allowed me to write the second book. And how we did it again, I'd sit there, write it out. Did you say this? With every word for word, verbatim, what she was telling me about the other side. Great detail. And then at the clairaudience, which then became almost 100% accuracy. And that says, is this correct? Give me a blast. Clairsentience. Bada bing. She'd hit me. That was correct. So at this point, covered a lot of information, a lot of thoughts. I'll stop here and I'll open it up for discussion.
Great, and thank you. I'll ask you a couple questions. Then I'll turn to the patrons. Probably we'll want you to come back to talk about your second book, because that's always, talking about the consistency. So what I do is astral projection, and so that can be like, kind of taking a temporary trip to that side. So when I hear people talking about the from a reliable source what the other side is like, it's fun to find that consistency happening again and again, because probably it's my experiences and the experiences of other people on this show. I'll bet you it's pretty consistent with what your wife was telling you, because when it's a reliable source of information, it usually is. But I haven't read your second book yet. You'd have to swing by the show sometime. We could hash that out. I'll ask a couple of quick questions for you first. One is concerning reincarnation. So there are different perspectives by reincarnation. One is that it happens multidimensionally. So this is kind of like what the teacher Silver Birch talks about, that it's kind of like different facets of a diamond. In this case, Len here, your prior life as was it Claudius in Rome, for example, may in some ways be fragmented off and still existing a bit independently, even on that side. And as your higher self is encompassing all of these little puppets, so to speak, at once. Do you have any thoughts about that?
First of all, I think it's interrelated to the concept of time. As you know, time here is linear, past, present, future. Time on the other side is a circle. The past is still ongoing. The future has already happened. So I think this is all related to this whole concept of facets. Are you basically saying, are you still living some of those lives in the past? It could be. I don't have a concrete answer for that. I've read the literature, and yes, and then you're talking about the higher self, the oversoul, where part of your soul energy is left behind on the other side, and most or some of it comes here. So I've read the literature. I have no statement of opinion because I have not seen enough data from many different sources yet. Okay.
Exactly right. So it takes data. I have looked into that a bit because, for example, a lot of people, they get nervous when they think, well, once I cross over, my loved ones will have all reincarnated, and then I won't be able to see them. And I often answer that because I've delved into that research, and I even asked a medium who was in trance. The spirit was talking through him, and this spirit was basically saying it doesn't quite work like that because of the multidimensional nature. Someone here might be reincarnated simultaneously to having an existence here on this side. So you won't be. So even if Uncle Lenny is reincarnated, you might still be hanging out with Uncle Lenny while he's simultaneously an Eskimo someplace else. So that was I've gotten that as a consistent line of information from different sources. But I just wanted to toss it your way to see if you picked anything up yet. But I guess it's probably worth looking into more.
There's something else too. Reincarnation is the fast track of, ultimately, it's the maturation development of your spirituality. Now, as Newton described, and he spent a lot of years on this, he developed a classification system. We're talking about your soul color soul core energy. Now, what he found out was the beginners, their soul core energy in the whole reincarnation process, which is many, many thousands of years. Kayla and I was over 17,000 years. You start out a beginner, your soul core energy is white. Then there are many steps in between. Then you go to the intermediate, which is the intermediate stage of your soul core energy changes to that color. Now you're intermediate in your development, your evolution, maturation of the spirituality of your soul. Then you go to the blue, which is the very advanced. So I went back and forth with Kayla many times. We are in the intermediate yellow towards the advanced. Now, an interesting thing is this. Free will comes into it if you want to incarnate. There are many, many, many souls in the universe that do not reincarnation. They don't want to for various reasons, whether they're afraid, putting up the trials and tribulations of life here, whatever it may be, a lot of reasons. Now, their path to ultimately the development of their soul spirituality, the evolution of their soul is very long. Because living is learning. Living is learning. So you got to live a life to learn about the manifestations of love.
Well, the question sometimes becomes, what can we do on that side to supplement having to come back to this planet? Because this planet can be such an extreme, and in extremes is how you grow, it's how you learn. I understand that. But there's many people I talk to, especially people who've had a real tough life on this planet, and they're like, I'm not going back to that planet. No one's going to drag me back into that nightmare. And I have to respect that a bit. And then there's also a line of thought in terms of, is there some kind of manipulation, like people pressure you to reincarnate and then you out of free will do it? But when you have a spirit guide telling you you must reincarnate, for example, in Hindu NDEs out of India, where there's like almost a bureaucratic type of thing. It's like, well, looking through your paperwork, I'm going to tick these boxes, but you didn't do this, you have to reincarnate, get to the back of the line. And they do it because they're also following their religion or their belief system. So there is also a train of thought like, I'm not going to follow any spirit guide. Anybody in pretending to be a spirit guide is telling me I have to go back. I'm going to make my own decisions and try to, progress at my own rate, however it is that I want to, not on a linear assembly line. I'm going to do what I want my own way. I'm going to do it on this side. And, if I'm not having the experiences I want on the astral plane on Earth, maybe I'll go to a freaking different galaxy and look, what I mean? It's like, it's about understanding that freedom, because I know the reincarnation topic can cause a lot of questions and anxieties like this. And those are often the directions I like to bring up a little bit, just based on some of those, issues that people have. Real quick, any thoughts? I'll open it up to everybody else.
I have had incarnations on other worlds. Most of my incarnations have been here. Earth is considered the most challenging planet in the universe to incarnate because you get the mental and physical challenges. Plus, it gets into the white, dark, gray entities, the soul core color. There's nothing to do with skin color. This is about your soul core color, the dark, white, gray entities. And we have a very high level of evil entities on this planet. And how are you going to learn about evil? How are you going to survive with evil? You got to experience it. Many of the very high evolved souls come to Earth for that reason. It's the toughest school to learn the lessons. The toughest school.
It's the toughest school because, when you're going into a nest of basically sociopathic entities, I think a soul runs the risk of getting involved with them, manipulated by them, and God knows what else. So in my view, it is a risk coming here. It would take incredible bravery to willingly incarnate here, and people must be vigilant not to go down a path that an evil soul, an archon, for lack of a better term, kind of the direction that they may take somebody. So it's all so some people say, oh, all reincarnation or you're being manipulated. It's not the case at all, but it's possible to come here in an incarnation, I think, just from my estimation, and you could end up going backwards. You could end up being manipulated, played along by some of those negative entities. So just a couple of thoughts real quick before I bring it over to the audience. Any thoughts?
No, I agree with you. The thing is, though, if you're ever going to learn about evil and how to survive among evil, you have to live it. You can't read about it in a book. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
This is the toughest school. You want to call it the
and
garbage?
we hear that consistently too, about how this planet is the crap hole of the universe, and that's
You read all Sylvia Browne's work. I mean, all her 30 books and everything about it. This is the garbage place, the toughest school, whatever you want to call it, the swamps. It's the place. But a lot of highly evolved souls have the courage to incarnate here because it's the fast track. In other words, you came out of the toughest school. Your evolution of your maturation, development of your soul is much faster.
Yeah, well, that totally makes sense to me. All right, so I am gonna turn it over to the patrons now. Thank you guys. I know we're going a little bit later than usual, so if you guys don't mind staying on a little bit longer to ask questions,
I'm here
of
for the
course,
duration.
if you're watching this on YouTube, this is Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. If you want to get involved in these types of live interviews and discussions yourself, or work with me one-on-one for astral projection coaching, I help people learn how to have experiences on the other side, then you can sign up as a patron over at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics to help support this channel and the work we do with guests like Len, and anyone else who comes along and shares their wisdom with us here as you say, Len, working toward the objective evidence based approach, not the airy fairy new age approach. That's always been the theme ever since this channel came on the air. With that message out of the way, I will go ahead and open up to patrons. I kind of want to we have some early questions in the chat. Sunday, would you like to repeat your question to Len, or do you want me to read it off from the chat?
Oh, I can repeat it. Len, I apologize if I missed this part. Do you hear from your wife in audible words? So is it all feeling, or are you hearing actual words like I'm speaking to you?
Okay. The evolution of our clairaudience, to hear or better to listen, at first it was poor. I'd hear us sporadically in our journey, but in the last 8 months, and now, first of all, she's with me 24/7, okay? In the last 8 months, which allowed us to write the second book, its accuracy is about 100%. Now, and very strong. It's like I'm talking to you and you talking to me. I'll give you other examples. She was a great cook. Great Italian cook. She made homemade pasta from the dough. She was fantastic. She'd go into the kitchen, create magic. Now, I'm not so much. I go into the kitchen now. She stands next to me. She tells me, do this, to cook this way, do it that way. She gives me the reasons why. She helps me cook every day.
Christy, would you like to say your question, or do you want me to just read it off from the chat?
I guess I can ask it. Hi, Lynn. I actually read your book several months ago, so I was hooked on your story, and pretty good job on
Thank you.
putting it together, because it's an easy read. So my question is, and I think I've maybe asked it to you, Cyrus, in the past, but are we living like multidimensional? Or like, are we multidimensional and living parallel lives with them on the other side? Do you know?
You're saying basically it's part of our soul energy on the other side, the higher self, the oversoul.
Or when we're asleep and then we're literally out of our bodies hanging out there. Any experiences with that?
Yeah, let me ask you about the astral travel. Now, this was interesting. I was asked about the astral travel in another presentation. And I said, well, I don't know if I'm astral traveling. So then I went and asked Kayla, Felicia. She stays with me every night. But when I fall asleep, she goes back to the other side. So then I asked, she said, I don't know. Then I asked my spirit guides. And I said, yeah, you come over on our side all day, recharge your batteries, we talk, we have meetings, etc. All that. My spirit guides knew but Kayla didn't know. So yes, astral travel is done. It's common. Recharging the batteries of the soul energy, talking to loved ones on the other side. There's a lot of reasons why. Okay. Yes, it's a very common thing. And you have part of your soul energy on the other side in here. Yes.
And right, and so and then like you come back here unless you're able to astral, unless what we call astral projection would be just being able to retain memories
Right.
when you're on that side. Most people are going out of their bodies, and then it's amnesia again when they come back into their bodies. And so that's where the parallel life thing comes into play, because you could say you're having this parallel life happening that you don't have any memory of. Maybe you've spent hours, if you want to use linear time, every single night of your life on that side, and then that whole collective years we don't have memory of. And that's the tricky thing with all this. It's like, what is Astral Cyrus up to? What is Astral Len up to? Do we have a little astral home, we put out little astral things, and we come back here, and it's like it's a strange thing, but it seems to happen with most of us.
Well, but do you think that they, if they're experiencing us also on the other side, on our astral bodies, do you think they miss us as we do? Like, we're grieving and missing them here. And
that's
are
a good
they,
point.
I mean,
They don't grieve like us because they know there's no death. They're eternal. They're eternal. They don't grieve like us. They feel for us, but they don't grieve it because they know we're eternal and that we will be rejoined again.
but wouldn't we already be, with them and not rejoined if we have part of ourselves with them all the time?
And then you get into percentages of soul energy that's just here and on the other side. And I really don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think you might have been hinting at what the answer might be from my research in terms of percentages, so that it's like when we cross over, all our percentages going back, and we don't always get all the memory back of who we were on that side. So when we're there, it is like we're going there for the first time. So that's why there's the reunions, because I've asked spirits about this. I've asked mediums about this. I've gotten some consistency about that. It's like the percentage of you is greater here, and when it goes back there, you're not necessarily even going to remember the life that you had been living there, maybe later on, because that's all still in the subconscious, which is part of the higher self. And then we regain access to that as we go along, living on that side. So it's pretty consistent, I think, because like in the near-death experiences too, like people say that they're arriving for the first time and they're so amazed, they're taken on a tour, like John Davis, for example.
To get the tour.
But they don't report like I arrived and I remembered everything. I'd already been here and I know everything is. Like you don't hear that, do you? It's like they're there for the first time. So so there is that little bit of there is that dichotomy happening, and also in terms of the grief, I think what they are aware of is that there's still like the version that's here that is grieving, and then this makes them sad sometimes because they see how upset that we might be. So for example, I know that there was a version of me living on that side. Like I was hanging out talking to my father, who passed away a couple weeks ago, and astrally here in my room, and I could tell that he was really like, even though he might see me all the time there, visiting me was like visiting this version of me, which doesn't have access. And he was cognizant of that. So it's like, he could be hanging out with Astral Cyrus, but then he has to, visit and check up on Earth plane, messed up, living on this freaking like night planet. So, so I don't know if that makes any sense. Does that make sense, Christy?
Yeah, sorry, that was my dog. Yes. Yes, it makes sense. Thank you.
Sure. Let's open it up then to I guess we'll just melee it. Whoever wants to ask. Jorge, your hand's up. So there you go.
Hi. Yeah, more than a question, I just wanted to say to Len that it's amazing because your story, like, it's pretty much, you've been telling my story. I mean, I've had similar case. My wife made a transition less than a year ago, about 10 months ago. And what you were saying, like I've been going through exactly the same things, and I still don't have the clear audience that you have. Like I get the feelings and I can communicate with her through feelings, but don't get the audience. But it was funny when you were talking about that thing, like going into the kitchen and cooking and stuff. That happens to me all the time. Like she's telling me, no, don't do that, do this, and stuff that I there's no way I would know. And
Right.
and linking it a bit to what Christy was just asking, when I ask her, Anna is my wife, when I ask her, she basically tells me that because of the concept of time that we have here is completely different to over there. Like it's not non-linear. They don't have, or she doesn't have any grief or anything like that, because she can relieve everything the moment. Like she doesn't miss anything, because it's like as if she's living it anytime she just thinks about it, kind of thing. So it's like, oh, don't you miss it? Don't you miss being with me? Don't you miss when we do this? Remember when we did that? And for her, it's like, I just done it right now. Like, but the moment you ask me about it, I've just done it. So I don't miss it because there's no concept of time. So there's no way to miss things because everything's happening at the same time, kind of thing. It's something that I think it's very hard for us to comprehend here, because we are tied to physical time and linear time, and it's just we can't really understand it.
Don't you feel with the bridge of the minds and thought that in many respects you're closer to your wife now than when she was here on this side? Don't you feel that way, Lori?
Yeah, I feel that way, and I guess going back to our ties to the physical stuff, I feel bad about it, because it's like, man, if only we could have had this when you were here physically, like all these things that we know about, I know about now, but she had to make the transition for me to know it and for her to understand. But yeah, definitely, like it's a, because before, when she was here physically, when you're not together physically, like I'll be at work, she'd be somewhere else, it's like, okay, we're doing some completely separate things. But now, like they're with you 24/7. Like doesn't matter what you do, they are there, and it. Before, it's like sometimes, I mean, I don't know if this happened to you or to, but sometimes where they were still here, they would know things that you think, how do you know that? Like you weren't there, but now you realize, like, oh, of course that we've always been, and it's like going back to that multidimensional, like we're always together.
Sure, that total self, the total consciousness, it's still them, totally them. In fact, Kayla tells me all the time, she not only remembers everything, but her mind is sharper now, because it's the total mind now, conscious, subconscious mind. So, and we were like a comedy team, her and I. We still make each other laugh all the time and everything. And I'll turn over in bed and I'll say, who are you? I don't know who you are. Do I know you? And then she starts blasting me with her clairsentience. And then she'll call me pet names, which I can't repeat since it is being recorded. But you know what I mean? We're still together. That's it. We have a real relationship. We're still together.
Yeah.
But let me add something about the clairaudience. What I did a long time is when I open my chakras, and the fifth chakra is the one, the light blue, if you do the chakra. All right. I combine exercises of sounds as combined with opening my chakra, that fifth chakra. So I combine the opening of the chakra with psychic exercises that enhance clairaudience at the same time. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And that helps. But it's a matter of listening too. It's a matter of, right now it's like me talking to you. I mean, that's how it is.
Yeah, I've only had that couple times, like that clear.
Keep at it. Never give up. Just it's never how many times you fall. It's getting up that counts.
Well, and like I said to her, look, I have the rest of my life to try, and
right.
if I don't get it, I'll be there anyway. So
just get up. Don't matter how many times you fall. Just keep getting up. That's it.
Yeah.
Keely, your hand is raised. How's it going?
Good. So I know you said, Lynn, that you were or you are a doctor, and so obviously you're looking at it with your scientific mind, and I bet that was pretty devastating in the beginning. After you went to the first psychic and she knew stuff that she couldn't have known, did you believe 100%, or were you still, well, you said you got all the books, so you still had a part in you that you just
Okay,
didn't know
I
for
understand the
sure?
question.
Yeah.
All right. When I went to the medium, and there's a difference between a psychic who tells you the future,
Yeah.
reads your mind. A medium is actually they're the middle person between the other side and here. But
Yeah.
I had a crack in my skeptic armor.
Yeah.
I started questioning, but that still wasn't enough. The turning point was when I started to go through all the massive amounts of evidence in all these medical and scientific fields, which almost most people not even aware of.
No, they're not. Yeah.
So that was the turning point. It was the evidence when I started to go through all those medical scientific fields. And then I realized, then talking to a lot of these people in all these fields, medical, and then I said, no, this is the real deal. This is the real deal.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
It's a very difficult, everyone has their spiritual journey is different for everyone. This was a difficult spiritual journey because I did it strictly from all the massive amounts of reading books and evidence and totally analytical. That was our spiritual journey right at the beginning. That's what convinced me.
With your scientific mind and under grief, like that's a lot,
I didn't even know who I was. I mean, the devastation of her last moments. I mean, she died in my arms on the kitchen floor. I mean, the images, I was destroyed. I was broken.
And what I don't understand, because this is, of course, your story is the great exception.
Yeah.
It's how people who are dyed-in-the-wool materialists are able to go through what you went through, because to me, I don't know how a materialist who refuses to look at any of this can operate in that paradigm and have someone die in their arms and be able to process life again very easily, because the materialist paradigm is basically set up for almost like a complete mental psychological destruction. That is maybe it's disconnected from reality. It's disconnected from science.
Saved me. She gave me life every day. She saved me. Her determination that we would be together. She started with all the signs, and then she saved me. It was, remember, communication is a two-way street.
Yeah.
She had the tremendous determination to say, and she saved me.
To hit you over the head with all those signs.
Yeah. I mean, it was really, you have to, excuse me, you have to be an imbecile not to pick up on this.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm getting back to the Bronx here now, but you have to be an imbecile not to pick up on this.
Well, that's basically, it summarizes this channel, but that's been my thesis for a while, but let's open up then. Does anyone else have any questions? I might be able to see you holding your hand up physically if your camera's on, or you can say something or just start talking. Anyone else have anything for Len? Anyone? Maybe not. Maybe we have.
I think that there was another question from Sunday in the questions.
In the questions, let me look. Okay. So this was, this was the second part. Sunday, I can read it off for you. I'm looking again at your first questions. I saw it was a 2-part question. Do you want me just to? I can read it off.
Sure.
If that. Okay. Sunday asks, what exactly happens according to his wife after you died? Has she described, like, she sees the tunnel, the light, life review, then she goes back to living in the astral for a while?
Well, do you want me to read verbatim what she did when the moment she passed? It's in the second book. Can you wait a second?
Sure. Yeah.
I think Cyrus, there was a question about what exercises should she do to hear, but
Okay. It's
I'll
three-part
read to
question. Okay, we'll
you.
we'll get to this part first.
okay.
Okay, this chapter is, give me a second. This is the second book. Hold on. Okay. Returning to a moment of death. Now I'm just going to read verbatim. Now, how we did this was the clairaudience was extremely accurate, approaching 100%. And every word I would write down, and then I'd say, okay, is this sentence correct? She'd give me a clairsentience blast. You got it. But then she told me by clairaudience, yes, you got it. Because we sit in the family room in the recliner chair together every morning, our coffee. Okay. And this is how we put it together. Now I'm going to read to you verbatim in her own, Kayla, in her own words.
And
Returning to a moment of death.
and one quick note before you do, as a about I don't know, like an addendum, like to put everyone's process can be different. So what one person goes through might actually be completely different than what someone else goes through, but there are similarities. Go on.
Depends. She went to the highest astral plane. That's the highest spirit because of a very high spirituality. You may go to the middle astral plane. It could be different. The lower astral plane.
The middle astral plane, you might wake up on your astral sofa because it's so similar to this world.
Exactly.
The higher astral plane, you might wake up to freaking dragons flying around and soaring through to gardens hanging off the clouds. So
let me give you what she told me. As soon as I came out of the tunnel, I started to become young again. It was amazing, and I felt young. It was quick in becoming young. Yes, I was upset, but I started to realize I did not die. There was an energy with me that I never felt before. The energy was so powerful, it made me feel so good. I looked down at myself and noticed a very slight glow around my body. My body did feel a lot lighter. I was so upset, I really couldn't appreciate being young again. As I was going through the tunnel, I started to feel better and better. The tunnel was quick. It was not long at all. The virtual angels line the end of the tunnel. If you ever like to discuss virtual angels, that's just before I came out. There were many. The Dominion angels greeted me as I left the tunnel. There were many too. Now, I asked Kayla to the process started immediately becoming young again. Kayla's response was, as you enter the tunnel, I started to feel good. The effect was immediate. My spirit guides were with me from the beginning and stayed for quite a while. They were worried about me. Now, I'm going to add something to this. At the wake and funeral, remember, this is immediately after her death transition. She wasn't able to communicate with me. I'll tell you what she said. This was asked later on in the second book. In a later conversation with Kayla, just after the transition home, she told me the following. I was standing next to you during the wake, the funeral, and at the cemetery, and the restaurant gathering afterwards. I did not know how to get your attention. You could not detect me. I tried very hard, but it was no use. You said such beautiful words at the church. At the time, I was crying a lot. I saw how you were crying and suffering. I wanted to comfort you, but I was helpless. Now, about the tunnel, on the other side, I'm not going to read that part. Everyone thinks the tunnel is a transfer point from this side to the other side. It's more than that. It's an energy field that restores cellular vitality. It's a combination of immediately transferring to the astral body, but also it's an energy field that helps restore cellular vitality. Okay, that's her in her words.
And I think an important point, because people think, how can there be cellular vitality? Well, if I'm in my astral body, I can poke myself and still bleed. So it's kind of like there's this transference from this side of this body, and it needs to adapt to that side. So you might still have cells and biology, but you don't want to be carrying with you any negative or any attachments left over from your experience here, and so it all gets amplified, it all gets upgraded, more or less. So that's kind of my interpretation. Is that right, Len?
Or cleaned?
You're asking basically what is the composition of the astral body?
And in a sense, like, I think it's a kind of a, it's maybe not
It's
something that could be answered
what
because we're in
has been told to me by
unknown
the other
territory.
side. This temporary body is loosely put together from a molecular standpoint. The astral body is much more dense and is superior in the molecular structure. That's why it's eternal. That's why you don't need to sleep. You don't need to eat. There's no removal of waste products. It's a higher molecular, superior, dense matter. Now, what the physics are, that's another thing. Remember too, we are not as solid here. If you look at an atom, if you remember from basic physics, chemistry, etc., you have the nucleus, which has the electrons and protons, etc. Then you got a big space that now the electrons, the protons and neutrons, then the electrons are going around. The astral body is much more dense. In other words, you don't have that space between the nucleus and the electrons going around. All right. It's a much superior form of matter.
And with less space, you could almost say it's more material. Now everyone's mind is just going to blow up.
Right. They are more physical than us in many respects.
Right, and that's something I've heard before. It's that's actually I've heard spirits say the same thing. It's like, we're more physical. Like, how can that be? It's like, well, we can feel something, and it's almost like we're fully connected to it, whereas you're disconnected from everything around you. So now we've just opened up another can of worms. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just ask one more question or two more questions. First, this is that combination, I think, of what some people might be thinking is like, in a nutshell, what are some techniques that people can do to improve their clairsentience or be able to have like a fraction of your experiences? Any quick pointers?
I started with Dr. Alan Botkin. He had his meditation techniques have extraordinarily high success rate, over 75% as far as connecting with a loved one. But I was spoiled too. You remember, there's got to be something you got to realize. Communication is a two-way street. That loved one wants the desire to communicate with you. It's not just you, it's them too. Kayla, Felicia had a tremendous desire. Now, it started with Alan Botkin. Sacral acoustics worked well. I would give a few tips. First of all, never give up. Everybody gets distracted when they meditate. I take that, but if you let the distraction bother you, then it gets amplified, the distraction. So what I do is, say if I'm working on my clairaudience, I'm opening my chakras and I'm practicing clairaudience psychic techniques, exercises. If I hear a sound outside, I incorporate that sound into my clairaudience exercises. You understand? I don't let distractions get amplified and take me off course, off direction. Those are some of the things I do. And it's a lot of it. Look, practice, perseverance, everything goes into it. But you got to realize, I knew from early on, she had the desire to communicate with me. And she ultimately saved me.
And it is a two-way street. You have to remember that too. There may be some situations where someone on that side is being a little bit selfish themselves, and maybe they're not, trying to connect with you as much as you're trying to connect with them. And so that's something I've encountered.
There's something else too. They have healing centers on the other side. If an individual had a traumatic, very stressful transition, many times the soul is eternal, but it can be damaged or scarred, and they have to restore that energy. Many times they have healing centers that they go into restoring that energy, so they're not able to communicate with you.
Yes, and I've seen these types of centers as well. All right, so with that, I'm now going to ask the final question, which is, Len, what's new with you? How do people reach you? How do people find your books? Do you have anything else coming up to let people who watch Afterlife Topics know?
Okay, you ready for this one? All right.
Ready to go.
Okay. I at present am writing a third book. Now, this is going to really rock people's worlds. You ready for the title of this third book?
I'm not ready, but let's hear it.
Mother God and Me, Our Memoirs. Mother God speaks about the universe, verbatim.
Okay, so kind of a channel type of situation.
Let's put it this way. This is going to open a lot of eyes. That's all I have to say at this point. You know me, I'm a very analytical person. You know I'm a very rational, no nonsense guy. It is what it is, all right? That's all I say. I'm writing a third book, and it's going to really be, let's say, very interesting at this point.
You know, the analytical stuff is good, man, because that's something that's not balanced much in this field. Sometimes it's people, it's such a thing as being too right brain, right hemisphere dominant. In the new age community, well, we see that a lot. So there's been a lack of the left hemisphere energy in these fields. Sometimes it even manifests male, female. Like sometimes there's a lot of, which is good. The female energy is good, but there's such a thing as a too much right brain,
Gotta have a
too
balance.
much it has to be that kind of balance to get things right. It's also why there's so few men interested in these fields. So you go to like Afterlife conferences, but back when me and Barbara were at AREI, I was like 90% female. So there is this kind of like imbalance in order for like a paradigm to change, we got that imbalance has to be addressed.
I called it the colossal transformation. I mean, I could not have written the first book or the second book without her. That's why she was first author, because all the information she gave, she was the awakening. Her determination was the awakening for me. I mean, it's really, I would sit sometimes stunned in amazement of the things she would do. It's as simple as that.
Well, with that, I guess we're going to wrap it up then. So I'll be sure to have the links to your books on Amazon that I will put in the description. As a quick reminder, if you're in a different country.
Conversations with My Sweetheart on the Other Side, and a detailed description of life on the other side.
Sounds great. And as a quick reminder to you guys who are using Amazon, if you by any chance like you're in the UK and you're clicking a .com link and it comes up and says the book's not available, try changing the address to .co.uk and see if that works. And all right, so I guess with that, Len, it's been great.
Hope you enjoyed it. Hope everyone enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much.
It was wonderful.
And I will go ahead and I think I'll make someone else the room leader, Jorge, and I'll get out of here. So until next time, thank you for watching Afterlife Topics.
Bless you all.
And
Yeah, bless you.
And
remember, love is the most powerful energy in the universe, and we are the light. Remember that.
Thank you.